All right, we're going to start exploring the functions of behavior. In the Behavior 101 video, we talked about what behavior is and how our mindsets about behavior can either support or limit both us and our students. Now we're going to take it a step further and ask, why does behavior happen? Because remember, behavior is never random and there's always a reason behind it. So here's one of the big ideas I want you to walk away with. All behavior serves a purpose. That purpose or function is the reason the behavior is happening. Function is an important vocabulary term for us, so please keep that in mind. Functions of behavior. There's always a reason, even if we can't see it right away. And that reason is usually going to fall into one of four categories. This is true for all students of all ages, in all settings, and across the support needs spectrum, whether they're in general education, classrooms, or receiving intensive special education services. These four functions, attention, escape avoidance, access to tangibles, sensory/automatic, those are universal. And the most important part is when we understand the function of a behavior, we gain insight into what the student needs. And when we understand what they need, we can teach more appropriate ways to get that need met. So let's walk through each function together. The first function is attention. Some students engage in behaviors because they want interaction, whether it's from you, their peers, or even the whole class. That interaction might be positive, like praise or laughter, or negative, like being scolded. But in either case, it's still an interaction and it's still attention. So think about that student who's always cracking jokes during a lesson, or the one who keeps talking to their peer during independent work time. Maybe someone's making silly noises or, saying whatever the latest TikTok trend noise is, or tapping at their desk, or whatever the case may be. Suddenly, half of your class is looking over at them instead of focusing on their assignment. All of these are attention-seeking behaviors. It's not always about being disruptive. And most of the time, it's about connection. Students, just like all humans, they want to feel seen, they want to feel acknowledged. And for some kids, this might show up through participation and helpfulness, which is lovely. But for other kids, it's going to show up as behaviors that pull focus in less productive ways. That's a very nice way of putting that. And yes, attention can be either positive or negative. You know that old saying, all press is good press? It kind of applies here too. If a student is craving attention, they might not care whether it comes from being praised, from raising their hand, or from being sent to the office when they disrupt the class too much. Either way, they get noticed, and that's what they wanted, and that can be reinforcing. So even when we redirect or reprimand a student, we may actually be reinforcing those attention-seeking behaviors, especially if what they wanted was attention and interaction. Think about a student who comes from a big household, maybe 6 or 7 siblings, and they don't get a lot of attention at home, not a lot of one-on-one attention at least. When they come to school, they might try to get that attention or that need for attention to be met by being the class clown or being the teacher's pet. And they're not trying to ruin your day, but their need for attention is coming up in a way that might disrupt the flow of your class. And sometimes those attention-seeking behaviors are quite minor. They're very easy to redirect. They're sometimes really easy to ignore as well. They're not a big deal. We just let them be. Other times, some of these attention-seeking behaviors are really intense and persistent, and they require more intentional planning and support. Understanding that the function is attention doesn't necessarily mean we're going to ignore that behavior. It really means that we're going to find a way to respond that doesn't unintentionally reinforce that student to think that this is an appropriate way to get attention. We're going to have to work or kind of direct the student towards finding ways to get attention in a way that's a little bit more socially acceptable or acceptable for the setting that they're in. Now, the second function is escape or avoidance. This is when a student engages in a behavior to get out of something, whether that's an activity, a demand to do something, a setting or a place they don't like, or even just a feeling. Maybe the task is too hard. Maybe they're feeling anxious, tired, overwhelmed, or just not ready to engage. Whatever the reason, their behavior serves the purpose of helping them avoid or escape that situation. Looking at a classroom example, we're going to pull out math materials, and my student recognizes that today's lesson involves the dreaded subtraction with regrouping, something that they hate because it's just not coming naturally. and we've been working on it for a long time. They see these papers and they push all the materials away. They get up from that area and leave entirely. Maybe their reaction is more intense. They start crying, and screaming, and even like hurting or banging their head and their fists on the table or the wall or the floor. At that moment, your attention as a teacher shifts as well. You now need to focus on keeping your student and others safe or kind of on task. But for this one particular student, that math worksheet for subtraction, it's off the table. And whether or not they intended to avoid it, they successfully escaped the need to do it. The demand of doing math work is gone because of their behavior. That means that their behavior, the way that they reacted, was successful. So now the student, like subconsciously or consciously, knows that if they cry and scream and do lots of things, the next time someone asks them to do math, they're likely to get out of it. So they're going to give it another shot. This doesn't only happen with academics. This happens everywhere in all cases. So if any of you are parents, and you've asked your child to clean the room or do the dishes or do some chore, so suddenly, they're sick. Oh, they're so tired. They got a little nauseous or their belly hurts and they're whining and they're crying and they're complaining and you just had it and you said, fine, go lay down. That's escape. That behavior that they engaged in, the crying and everything to you, that's a form of escape. They're trying to escape whatever the demand was, the demand being chores. It's not always intentional or manipulative. This is just a very human thing to do. And we all do it. Avoidance can show up as procrastination, as ignoring emails, as walking past that laundry pile for a few days. It serves, it's the same function, it's just a different form. Students with learning disabilities might avoid reading out loud by asking to go to the bathroom every single time it's their turn. And when you know it, they return just when the reading section is done. A student with a developmental disability might be a little bit more inclined to elope or run away during transitions, not because they're trying to be defiant per se, but because they love where they are. Maybe they were just in art class and they just can't bear the idea of going back to your regular classroom with all the other stuff that isn't art. So they leave, they run away. That's their immediate bodily reaction to something. And that behavior helps them escape the situation they don't want to face. Now, if you're thinking, why would they run away if they wanted to stay in that class? You're thinking with common sense. Behaviors, especially for children in the moment, don't often come with this common sense little guy in the back of their head saying, wait a minute, this might not be what you want. We're the ones who help make that internal voice stronger, help them figure some stuff out. You and I as teachers, but also their families at home or whoever they live with at home. We're all supposed to play a part in helping that little voice get a little louder in moments like this. So whether the escape is quiet, like shutting down, or loud, like throwing materials and yelling, that function is the same. Relief. The behavior removes or delays something the student is trying to avoid. And this is true across all support need levels, mild, moderate, extensive supports. What may look like defiance on the surface might actually be avoidance underneath. Try to match the function to the behavior using a few real-life classroom examples. In the first example, we have a student who blurts out answers in class without raising their hand. A possible function or reason for the behavior is to get attention from the teacher, from the peers, or maybe both. Think about it. This student might know the answer, or maybe they don't. But either way, they want to be seen and heard. And when we respond by saying, hey, remember to raise your hand, we're giving attention, even if it's corrective. And sometimes that's all they're after. In the second example here, we have a student who puts their head down when handed a writing assignment. A possible function for this behavior could be escape, because that task might feel overwhelming or even impossible. It could be that writing is really difficult for the student, or they had negative experiences where writing didn't go well and they got like a lot of negative feedback. So instead of trying and failing, they shut down to avoid the discomfort entirely. Putting their head down is a way to say, nope, I'm not doing this. And it works because now you, the teacher, are trying to figure out just how to get the student to sit up in their seat and to talk to you instead of actually working on that assignment. Pause for a moment here and think of a student or a person that you know who has displayed some kind of similar attention-seeking behavior or escape-related behavior. What do you think that they were trying to actually communicate in that moment? This is the kind of reflective practice that I want us to engage in a little bit more, and it's going to help us move from reacting to behavior to understanding it. The third function is access to tangibles. And by tangibles, we mean things we want. It could be a toy, a snack, a seat, a turn, a tablet, anything. The important thing to know is that the behavior is happening because the student wants access to a specific item or activity. So imagine this, you're in a classroom where everyone takes a turn with the class share bear, but one student starts crying and suddenly following the other kids who have the share bear in the moment. Maybe they keep trying to grab at it or push others away so that they can get to their turn faster. Or they stole that bear altogether. It's caused commotion. That behavior that they're having right now is being driven by the desire for the bear. The bear in this scenario is a tangible. It's the student wants access to the tangible or the bear. Think about a different situation where a student might throw a huge fit from the moment an item that they want is taken away. So let's say we take away that bear from the student. It's not your turn anymore. And suddenly this kid is on the floor crying, stomping, screaming, and then refuses to talk or move for the rest of the day. They're still exhibiting behaviors because they want access to that tangible. The behavior that they're getting right now is triggered by the loss of their item, but the function of it, the purpose for it is still access to tangible. Here's the tricky part. Let's say you just want the behavior to stop. You're worried that they're going to hurt themselves or completely derail your lesson. So you hand the bear back because today is not the day to fight the battle. And that's understandable. We have all been there. And sometimes you need to learn to pick those battles, right? From a behavioral perspective, by doing that, we reinforce the behavior. We're teaching that student, oh, if I throw my body and cry and scream and just steal it, yeah, sure, I might get in trouble a little bit, but they're going to let me keep that bear. And that's what I want. Again, students are not internally as manipulative as I'm making it sound. This is just how their brain is kind of working on this. And I'm going to pop in here to say something that might sound familiar if you've been in schools recently in the past couple of years. Most of the classroom's behaviors we've seen for lots of time are attention or escape related. And tangible access to tangibles always been one of the main reasons we see a lot of classroom-based behaviors. But tangible in the past couple of years, in my opinion, has been increasing a lot more. Like I'm hearing a lot more about students' behaviors related to the tangible. And the tangible that I'm hearing a lot of is technology. So students' behaviors are the function of behavior is that they want access to a tangible item, and that is technology. But the technology piece is kind of playing a really big role in behavior right now, is in my opinion, working with lots of teachers and lots of students in the past couple of years. I see it a little bit more with younger students right now, and they're coming into schools with a deep love and maybe dependence or addiction on tablets, iPads, screens in general. They want tablet time and nothing else is going to do in that moment. Why? Because iPads and screens are incredibly engaging. We know this. We may also be dependent and addicted to our own screens because they're really fun. And you can tell that student, you can have iPad time after centers, or everyone knows iPad time is only on Fridays and you have to earn X amount of stickers to be able to do it. But that student wants that iPad right now. And if they don't get it, we're talking meltdown, screaming, throwing, refusing, you name it. It's not necessarily, again, that the student is trying to be manipulative. It's just that the tangible they want is really motivating. It's really engaging. And if giving it to them works, even just once, then we're teaching them that's an appropriate way to actually get what they want. Reteaching students a new way for them to get what they want, that is hard, but it has to be done. If we don't want to try and wrangle a bunch of screen addicted, like 6 and 16-year-olds, we're going to need to learn how to reteach some of these behaviors to students. And the fourth function, it is sensory or automatic. Now, what does this mean? Sensory or automatic behaviors are behaviors that feel good. They're internally feeling. They help a person regulate internally, and they are not socially mediated. And that's actually a very important point. Behaviors that are not socially mediated means that the behavior isn't about getting attention. It isn't about escaping. It isn't about getting access to something. It is happening because it serves an internal need. Let's break it down a little bit. These behaviors can include rocking back and forth, flapping hands, humming or making vocal sounds, covering your ears, tapping repeatedly, shaking your legs repeatedly, repeating phrases. There's so many different behaviors that kind of fit into this category here, and they happen automatically. You don't really even notice that you're doing them. If you've ever caught yourself bouncing your knee under a table during a stressful meeting, or clicking a pen when you're anxious. That's what I do. I'm a pen clicker. Congrats. Now you know what a sensory behavior is. You know that you also engage in them. This is a weird one for me. Sometimes when I'm teaching, my nose gets really itchy because now I'm suddenly very aware that everybody's looking at me and not, it's internal, and my behavior is to keep like kind of scratching and doing this thing. I'm working on rewiring that. Know that you're not doing it for anyone else. These sensory automatic behaviors, we're not doing them for anyone else. We're not trying to get something out of it. You're doing it because for whatever reason, it helps you regulate. Same thing for your students. In schools, we see sensory behaviors or have to address them, especially among students who tend to have more extensive support needs. I'm someone who's taught this population of students. I've often seen students kind of rock back and forth and humming and flapping their hands or covering their ears and singing loudly. And again, they don't want attention. They are trying to self-soothe. They're trying to process whatever overwhelming input is happening to their senses. These behaviors are automatic and they're going to serve a self-regulatory function. And of course, the important part here is that sensory behaviors, they're not bad behaviors, not in any way. They're part of how a person manages the world around them. When that behavior becomes unsafe, like perhaps they're engaging in biting or hurting themselves or hurting others, when it significantly interferes with learning or social interaction, that's where we need to step in. We're not trying to eliminate the behavior, but we're trying to teach more appropriate ways for that student to get that same sensory need. And this is going to help students self-regulate a little bit better in the environment that they're in. So if a student is biting their hands during transitions because it calms them down, we might want to work with an occupational therapist to find a safer alternative, like a chewable bracelet, calming squeeze toy. The goal is to meet the same need, not to stop the behavior. Try to match the function to the behavior using a few examples from classrooms that serve students with extensive support needs. In the first example, we have a nonverbal student who rocks back and forth and hums during transitions. The possible function for this behavior is sensory. It's calming or self-regulatory. This is a pretty classic example of sensory or automatic behavior. It's not about getting a reaction from someone else. It's not about avoiding the transition necessarily or trying to get something. It's about helping the brain and body regulate through a stressful or overstimulating moment. When we see students engage in some of these sensory behaviors, we don't automatically want to stop it. We want to understand, is the behavior harmful? Is it disruptive to learning? Or is it helping the student manage the transition more successfully? Because in many cases, that sensory fueled behavior is actually doing some very important emotional and sensory work. If the behavior is not hurting anyone or anything, then it might be fine to let the student cope this way. Maybe everyone else just needs to get used to it. In the second example, we have a student who cries loudly and knocks over classroom materials when asked to leave the reading carpet and return to their seat. A possible function of this behavior is to maintain access to the reading carpet or preferred materials there. The reading carpet in this situation, that's the tangible. The student's behavior functions to get more time with something concrete, which is that reading carpet. Either it's the books that are there, they have a comfy spot, they love the stories that are told. They're not trying to escape a demand or gain attention. A meltdown that they might be having in this moment of crying loudly and knocking over materials is a way for them to try to hold on to the activity that they don't want to give up. It's their access to tangibles. Sometimes the student's internal reaction is, nope, that's not what I want. And the behavior that follows is their way of expressing that. We see this with students who have limited communication skills and who are at the very same time trying to communicate something with you. It's really hard to figure out, and it's frustrating for both parties. Eventually, we become very good at it, though. Take a moment to pause and reflect.